So,
77 new cases, active cases up by about 10 to 15. We're still under 600, which is good. Um, the hospitalization numbers are up a little bit to 50. The ICU numbers are up to 9. Um, the deaths actually went down. Apparently, one of the people that died was they switched it and said it was from other causes. So um, that's good that they did that because we already know that in other areas, there's people that are dying with the virus that aren't dying directly of the virus. And there's probably some other people on this list. The reality is the number probably isn't actually 160. It's probably actually, I don't know, 10, 15% lower, just guessing off the top of my head. For the reason that we know that in the States, they've had funeral directors saying that they've been instructed to mark people as dying of the virus, even if they died of other causes and had the virus. The Toronto admitted that, where they have hospitals that are doing that, where they're doing the same thing. So again, it's probably happening in every area. The debate isn't whether or not it's going on. The debate is to what extent. So take that for what you will. Which again, another reason why I don't think that the government wants to talk about that is that it's just another example of the death rate being even lower than what it currently is, which is already really low. They did test a lot of people, about 8,000 people. So that's a good sign. They're testing lots of people. Again, that's one of the main reasons why there has been an increase in cases. There's no uh, uptick in the percentage, the likelihood of testing positive. It's been consistently between 0.5 and 1% in Alberta, from what I've seen. So nothing to worry about as far as that goes. I am recording this a little earlier than I normally do, so the numbers out of the states aren't out at the time of me doing this. I don't know what they'll be like. My guess is that they're probably going to be pretty much the same. There'll be 50 to 60,000 cases with probably a little under 1,000 deaths would be my guess. But again, that's the numbers. The next thing I wanted to talk about is this tweet from Matt Walsh, and he says, even with a flu vaccine, the flu is still more dangerous to children than the virus, yet people insisting that we keep schools closed for the virus never suggested that for the flu. The idea was never raised about any of these people, or raised by any of these people. That's why it's impossible to take them seriously. Now, again, it's the same thing. Like, I hear these people, that these parents that are worried about. I mean, before it was, oh, can I send my kids to camp, or can I send my kids to daycare, or can I let my kids play sports? And it's incredibly. It just goes to show just how stupid they are. I mean, I don't mean to be mean to people, but a lot of it's just flat out brainwashing. People are susceptible to brainwashing. I don't mean to be mean, but the problem is that because of people like that, we are in the mess that we are currently in. So, although on one hand, I don't mean to be mean, on the other hand, it is because people like that we are in the mess that we're in. So, I'm not going to pretend that the reality isn't reality. So, yeah, the problem with the parents, again, is he says that's why it's impossible to take them seriously. And it's exactly too, in that if they were halfway remotely paying attention, they would soon figure out that the death rate is lower than the flu. Not only that, it's quite a bit lower than the flu. Not only that, too, it's very rare. In fact, I've heard it's almost impossible for kids to spread it to parents. Again, so the whole we can't have kids going to school because they'll give it to teachers doesn't make any sense. So again, it's just sheer and utter paranoia. I think it's going on a few scales. I mean, for one, people know that public school isn't that important. Like, if public school is it was essential as what people made it out to be, they would figure out a way to make it work. And again, teachers are on average about the one of the laziest occupations out there. And again, I don't mean to be mean, but teachers. I mean, you look at teachers in Canada. I mean, you get a salary that's definitively worth more than they're worth, and you know that because if teachers were worth how much they're getting paid on average, um, they wouldn't be afraid of a private system, because in a private system you get paid exactly how much you're worth. And not only that, too,
the teachers that think they're above average, which is probably the majority of people, because the majority of people think that they're above average, which doesn't make sense, but nonetheless, that's how things work. The majority should support, even be strongly for it again. So public school teachers aren't worth as much as, again, and I stress on average because people bring up, oh, well, I know a public school teacher who's anti-communist and they work so super hard. But again, I understand that there's exceptions to the rule. But when we're talking about massive groups of people, we don't care about individuals. Again, because in democracy, it doesn't matter that there's exceptions to the rule, that the majority get their way no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's immoral, unethical, whatever. The majority get their way. So that is the problem, is that the teachers, and the teachers know too that they're going to get paid one way or the other. So they would, I mean, they already have their three months off during the year. They want more. And not only that, they probably want a raise. So again, that's one of the reasons. Again, like I say, the other reason is that public school is so unnecessary that in the back of their heads, pretty much everybody knows that it's that every kid could take the whole year off and they wouldn't miss a beat. Another reason too, I think, is, I mean, on the good hand, is that parents should start to homeschool their kids. Any parents who can homeschool their kids should do it for many reasons. Number one, um, you don't get they're not susceptible to the brainwashing. Number two, it's not really that hard. I mean, I follow a couple people on YouTube that have brought it up before, and then one of them isn't even political, and the one that isn't even political is the one that's the most passionate about homeschooling and how good it is. Yeah, it says that, yeah, we can do a day's worth of work in like 2 hours. So again, and that's the other thing too. Another reason why public school teachers are overpaid is that, I mean, actually, there's two other big reasons, come to think of it. Number one is that if they need to justify their 80, 90, $100,000 a year salaries, and the only way they can do that is if they're working their 40, 50 hours a week like a normal person does. So again, they have to have a bunch of filler time. They have to have their boring note taking and this break and that break and all the garbage that you have during the public school day. But in reality, again, like homeschoolers have proven that you can get the amount of work that it takes in the average school day done in like a third of the time. Again, so that's the first. Again, the other reason is that um, homeschool kids don't their level of um, they score very similar on the SATs, which just means that, hey, if you go to school, go to college for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is for public school teachers, again, if they're so good at their jobs, then why does someone who has no formal training do just as good of a job at your job as you do? Again, so that's one of the many reasons, but I don't want to talk too much about this issue. The main point being is that it just goes to show the level of paranoia of the average person, that again, your kids are more likely to die from the flu, and yet you're all worried about this. Again, it just goes to show that people can be convinced whatever the government tells them. Whatever the government tells them, they can be convinced of it. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. This is from Clay Travis. He says, interesting graphic here. Strong argument that the only reason the virus epidemic at all was an epidemic at all was because the governors in New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Massachusetts panicked based on expert, quote unquote, expert forecasts, sent virus patients back into nursing homes. Now, again, you can see the graph here in that the pandemic line here, or sorry, the threshold of it being considered an epidemic, the other states, the other whatever 45 states, so the vast majority, not only that, that includes heavily populated states like California, Texas, and Florida. I mean, these ones include heavily populated states as well, but it's not that these are just rural states or something like that. It just barely crossed the threshold of being an epidemic. Again, and the other states were peaked at about 4 times the cases. So again, it doesn't make any sense that people are all hot and bothered about the numbers out of the states. It's their numbers are bad because a handful of states made terrible decisions. And those were bad decisions made by the government. It has nothing to do with the lockdowns or any garbage like that. Again, this is also from Clay Travis. He says the state of Florida has had 82,397 people, 34 and under, test positive for the virus. Of that number, 28 have died. That's a death rate of 0.00034. They've had 144,210 people under the age of 54 test positive. That's a 0.0016 death rate. Again, that number is lower than the flu. The approximate number of the flu, as I've seen, is 0.01. So it's 0.1. So it's actually relatively significantly lower than the flu even. So again, it's the exact same thing that I've been saying all along, and that if you're under the age of 50 to 60, the death rate's lower than the flu. By the time this is all said and done, we're probably going to figure out that the overall death rate's lower than the flu. Maybe not on that one, but I mean the under 50 to 60 range, we've had multiple areas proving that. So again, this isn't something that the vast majority of people need to be worried about, unless you're in the age bracket that is susceptible to having issues. Then you have nothing to be worried about. You don't need to wear a mask unless you're sick. You don't need to do any of that garbage. That the vast majority of us should go back to our normal lives with little to no restrictions. The people that are in the age bracket that are susceptible should take precautions, and the people that are in the nursing homes and whatnot should take fairly heavy precautions. Aside from that, the average person's life should look almost exactly the same as it did prior to this whole situation. This is from, and the last thing I wanted to talk about here is from Leonard Roxon, and he says, "What a crime this is to Canadians, and for all what Trudeau to fund the UN. Canada is carbon negative with its vast boreal forests and marshlands, but today we have to pay a carbon tax to offset China's greenhouse gas production. Time for the Trudeau Liberals to leave." And this is a story out of Global that he links to, saying federal carbon tax cost SaskPower customers 83 million in 2019-20, says annual report. Now again, for all the idiots out there that, I mean, the vast majority of them probably not watching this video, but I'm sure people know people in their personal life that are in the group of idiots that think, oh, a carbon tax, it's only a 5 or whatever it is. It's probably, I think it's 10 to 15 cents now. It's more. It's only 10 cents on gas. Who cares? But yet they're so ignorant, it's not even funny. And that a tax on gas is a tax on everything. Because how does food get to the store? I don't know. Maybe a diesel or gas powered truck. How does the store keep their lights on? I don't know. Fossil fuels largely. How do they power their freezers and their fridges? Oh, fossil fuels mostly. How do the people who work there get to work? And, all this kind of stuff. Like, not only that, how is the food planted? Or something before that, how is the food picked up by the farmer who plants it? Oh, in a truck, um, which is powered by gas. How is it planted? By a machine that is powered by gas. How is it cultivated or harvested by a machine that's powered by gas? How is it transported? A machine that's powered by gas or diesel. Like again, um, it's got to take it to the refine not the refinery, the where the farmers take their crop. Once they're done with it, they got their contract with whoever they have their contract with. They sell it to them for agreed upon price, and then it's transported usually by train or by I mean, a lot of times by train to wherever it is the processing place. So again, it's literally being taxed, double digit amount of times. So again, it's a tax on everything. Not only that, too, it's a tax on your own power too. And the fantasy of, oh, we can power everything based off wind and solar. It's a sheer and utter fantasy. Again, especially in places like Alberta and Saskatchewan. I mean, especially northern Alberta and Saskatchewan specifically, because it's not as windy and it's not as sunny. Like there's a lot of times, like if you live in like northern Alberta, again, there's a lot of days in the winter when it's not very windy and it's not very sunny. And you can't just, oh, we can just store it in batteries. No, again, the battery technology sucks. Again, so that's not an option. Again, so it's this terrible, terrible idea too. And we know the carbon tax doesn't reduce greenhouse gas or sorry emissions. Actually, it does. It's 0.5% according to the BC's own numbers, but um, spending probably billions of dollars a year to reduce emissions 0.5%. Like you would be better off spending that money, lobbying China and India to reduce their numbers. Again, it's beyond insane too. Not only that too is that these Western governments are fully on board the Paris Agreement, the Kyoto Accord, all these stupid climate agreements that literally allow China and India to continue to ramp up their levels of emissions. Again, Canada's like 1%, less than 1% of the world's emissions. Not only that, most of it, and like I say, I've seen arguments that say all of it is completely offset by the fact that we have massive amounts of trees. Like we have one of the most probably I don't know if we do or not, but we probably are right up there in countries with the most trees. In fact, if I had to bet money, I probably would. I can't think of one off the top of my head that would have more. I mean, Russia is the only country that's bigger. I don't know if they would, but again, the idea that we need to pay a carbon tax, even if climate change is true and it's something that's going to affect us and it's going to affect us very soon, it makes no sense whatsoever for us to pay a carbon tax because we know, let's just say it reduces emissions 1%, which is more than the BC government's own numbers have shown. But let's just be generous and say 1%. We're literally talking about less than one thousandth of the world's emissions. That is what the government of Canada is arguing for a carbon tax, that reducing the world's emissions by less than one thousandth of the world's emissions is going to make a difference. Like, are you insane? Are you insane? Like, how do you even measure that? Do we even have machines that can measure that fine? Like, I don't even know if we do. Again, so it's just beyond insane that anyone even if you believe in climate change, that's not even part of the discussion. It's not even part of the discussion here because um, it doesn't work. We know a carbon tax doesn't work. Not only that, too, the big thing to talk about here is the fact that it costs SAS Power customers $83 million. Like, imagine how much cheaper your energy would be if we didn't have this stupid carbon tax. So again, everybody complaining nowadays about not having enough money. If you're not up in arms about this kind of stuff, you have no respect for me, because there's one thing that the government is taxing you on that makes no sense, that you're losing money from, um, that you would have a lot more money from. And the reason is that most people are too stupid to realize it too. People don't realize that, hey, whatever it is, 10 cent, or sorry, like a couple bucks every time you fill up with gas, and 10, 50 cents to a dollar every time you get your groceries. Oh, it doesn't seem like anything, the only time you do it, but when you add it up, the fact that you fill up with gas like what, 50 times a year, maybe, I mean, there's 50 weeks, once a week, maybe a little less, a little more. Let's say 40 times a year. You know, that's over $100 right there. I mean, you look at your power bill, you look at your groceries. It's costing the average family at least $1,000. The carbon tax. Like I say, the problem is that people are so stupid. Is that because it's never a big charge all at once. Like if the government just sent people a bill for one big charge all at once, carbon tax bill $1,000 or $2,000, people would be up in arms. They would be furious. But because it's all clumped up in these little charges, most people are too stupid to even recognize it, and are too ignorant. So again, that's one of the many the problems when it comes to this kind of stuff. So anyway, that's the video for today. If you'd like to, make sure that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email, got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last few things, check me out on Parlay, Twitter, and BitChute. Very important that you follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already. Again, the only way that things are going to change is if you continue to support people that are out there speaking the truth. So make sure you check me out on those other platforms.